So you didn't go up on stage, though? Yeah, maybe that's why I missed a bunch of signs. Of course, you know, we were at kind of the front walking past. I got the there.
Okay, good evening, everyone. We'll go ahead and call to order the Sacramento Regional Transit meeting for Monday, January 22nd, 2018. Clerk, please call the roll.
Director Budge? Here. Director Hansen? Here. Director Harris?
Here.
Director Hume is marked as being absent. Director Jennings? Here. Director Kennedy?
Here.
Director Miller?
Here.
Director Natoli? Director Schneer? Here. Director Cerna?
Here.
Chair Morin?
Here.
With that, we have a quorum at 96 votes. This meeting of the Sacramento Regional Transit District will be cablecast without interruption on Metro Cable 14, the local government affairs channel. Tonight's meeting will air on Wednesday, January 24th at 6 p.m. and replayed on Saturday, January 27th at noon, and webcast at www.sacmetrocable.tv. It is also closed caption. Members of the audience wishing to address the board should fill out a speaker card located at the rear of the room and provide it to me or Adam. Please speak into the microphone and state your name for the record. We would appreciate everyone turning off their cell phones. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Cindy. Would everyone please rise and join me in the pledge?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, first item, please.
Public addresses the board on matters not on the agenda.
Okay, we do have a number of requests to speak on this item. We'll start with Barbara Stanton, and after Barbara is Mike Barnbaum, and after Mike is Arthur Ketterling. Good evening, Barbara.
Good evening. We sent out a letter to you. I know some people got it, but we're just going to reiterate for other people that didn't get it. So here we go. Once a month meetings. It is our understanding that except for two board members, Directors Budge and Natoli, the majority of the board opted for a once a month meeting whenever possible. We oppose this decision because, especially on certain months, December and June, the agenda becomes overcrowded, which produces an overly lengthy meeting, and because of transit restrictions, cuts off public participation and input. Another issue is that if the board wants to bring an item back for consideration, a whole month passes before the item is heard again. Bottom line is, business is not being conducted in a timely manner. Perhaps it is time to change the composition of the board. There is nothing in the PUC code that states it is mandatory for elected officials to serve on this board. It states in 10-2101, a member of the City Council or Board of Supervisors may serve as a member of the Board of Directors, but it mostly talks about appointees prior to that sentence. We are not suggesting to change the whole composition of the board, but if you are too busy to serve on the board 2 times a month, we ask you to consider allowing non-electeds to serve. We are certain there would not be a shortage of applicants. Your jurisdictions already have a process in place for people to be appointed to various boards and commissions to serve as either a standalone member or as your representative. Why not open the board to non-electeds and add the RT board to your board and commissions lists? We are asking you to do so. Thank you.
Thank you, Barbara. Mike Barnbaum, and following Mike will be Arthur Ketterling. Good evening, Mike.
Greetings, Chair Morin and members of the board. Mike Barnbaum of Ride Downtown 916. As you will recall at your December meeting, a major vote was taken to reduce the student monthly fare on regional transit system. Within the motion, It was directed to explore what do other transit systems do, as well as whether or not transit systems incorporate anything in their programs during the summer months for students and youth. Today is part one of reporting back to your board on what other transit systems do per the direction of your motion. Today's presentation is, what does the Yolo County Transportation District do? The Yolo County Transportation District met 2 weeks ago on January 8th and introduced to their board their short-range transit plan. In it, they provided to me and others in the audience, public and stakeholders, a copy of their fare structure, which was very great piece of information and an asset in today's presentation. So here for you is what the Yolo County Transportation District does for students, and it's broken up as to what they do from September to May and from June to August. For cash fares, students from September to May pay a fare of $1.10. They also would pay $1.60 if they're riding a Yolo Bus Express bus. From June to August, students only pay 50 cents but are not provided a transfer. And from June to August, the express fare is the same thing. The monthly pass, probably the item your board might be most interested in. From September to May, the monthly pass price is $46.75. It is added onto the Connect card. There are no stickers added onto a student ID or separate ID. It is a Connect card issued ID. In the summer months, from June through August, students are eligible to pay $30 and can ride all summer for that one price. It's not $10 per month, but it's $30 one time all summer.
Okay, thanks.
You have any questions on this?
All right, thank you.
No, thank you. And I will come back in March to talk about what agencies in Placer County are doing.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Mike. Arthur, and following Arthur is Jeffrey Tardigia. Good evening, Arthur.
Good evening. I'm Arthur Ketterling from Citrus Heights. I just wanted to let you board know that not only myself, but a few other people is having problems with the Connect card, even on the regular bus, fixed route. And 99.9% of the time with Route 95 and the neighborhood Citrus Heights City Ride, it doesn't accept it at all. Just once in a while on Route 95, it does accept it. But overall, it hasn't been doing that. And no, the drivers know that and everything else. When it doesn't accept it on the regular bus, the driver says it's to go ahead and sit down, that it's just being stubborn. but overall, there shouldn't be a problem with the Connect card of accepting of what it's supposed to do. I know you've had like a lot, went through about 7 years through this to get the bugs out, if you want to call it that, and problems before we started it. And I know it's only been around just a short time, but I think I was wanting to bring it up with the board that we're still having problems. And not just to let you know, too, that with the Connect card, that it's, even when the driver has tried it, it fails.
Okay, great. Arthur, thanks for coming out and sharing that with us. Okay, let's see. Jeffrey Tartagia. Good evening, Jeffrey.
Andy, you're not going to like me today. But anyway, failure on the Harrison getting, should we say, access route over there. I-80, just destroy the damn east elevator because that's the source of your problem. There's some other things that need to be changed and done. And please, improve the signage. Your student bus pass, you did it for financial reasons. You should have some of you guys go on the 218, 219, 214 and see what, when you being that many students on the bus, the impact of that. I can tell you in Washington, D.C. and other places how big of a jurisdiction and issue that has become. You should have considered about the capital grid area of upgrading. Just spent 2 hours at a new meeting, a new board that was forming. It was fascinating to learn from transit to the other things. Now, the other pieces, hey, this is great. Arthur, should we say, Patrick, Kennedy, Measure A really needs to be examined and really determined about where that took an oversight committee. Maybe RT needs to get an oversight committee because with once a month meetings, you've delegated so many things to general manager, previous manager, you didn't do that. Where is the accountability aspect of that and knowing what gets done? Now, if I say 9914, I bet nobody on the board knows what that means. That's 65th Street Light Rail Station. That's the designated number for it. Finally, after a year, you guys painted the curb red and painted it yellow. Now that, Jeff, you've sold the project to students, we'll see all the complications that resolve around through there. I vouch with Steve Hansen, where now our wonderful, and thank you, Don, for bringing the attention about your real estate insurance company, because they're now for the third time making a reduction of price on property through there. I suspect you're going to find on 65th, they've already made one request. I suspect you're going to find several more remediations that need to be done on 65th that were there from 2008, 2010. So, yeah, there's lots of things. And, yeah, I think you might be a good thing to get a Los Rios, student trustee member on here. It would help you guys and help them understand about board of directors. And it would give you some insight into the 20-plus thousands students that maybe are riding regional transit. Also, website. Once again, I will offer your 60% of or should we say RT riders have the little tiny lifetime phone. Doesn't work for the website. You turn around and say, contact your provider. Like Assure is going to tell you, it's not an iPhone and it's not this. The new website needs big help.
All right. Thanks, Jeffrey. There are probably a few board members that weren't mentioned, so they probably feel pretty bad about that. So if you could...
I will include you next time.
Okay, thanks, Jeffrey. So with that, next item, please. That concludes...
Consent calendar items 1 through 10, noting that you have a speaker on, or 2 speakers on item 10.
Okay, so any questions, comments on items 1 through 9?
Yeah, Mr. Chair.
Yes.
I have questions on 6 and on 9.
6 and
9.
9? Okay, so why don't... So we'll just pull those for separate discussion. So I'll go ahead and move items 1 through 5, 7 and 8.
Andy.
Can I pull my card? It's me.
Okay, you don't need... Okay.
No, we'll write an email.
Okay, sounds good. So that's addressing item 10.
Okay.
So with that, a motion on the floor.
So moved.
Okay, seconded by Director Hansen. So please, or all in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Abstentions?
Motion carries at 96 votes.
Okay, item 6.
Item number 6, resolution approving an interagency contract with the Sacramento Housing and Redevelopment Agency for Dos Rios Light Rail Station final design services. And Neil Nance is here, and Ed Schofield is here to answer any questions.
Okay, Director Budge?
So I asked Mr. Nance if there were any graphics or conceptual designs or anything like that that we could see, because it's been a very long time.
Yes, ma'am. We're trying to pull up a concept now that shows the station location of the project here, and let's see. Let's see. The proposed Dos Rios Light Rail Station. This station is part of SHRA's Twin Rivers Housing Redevelopment. It will provide transit-oriented development opportunities, offer transit connections to jobs, and is located in Sacramento's Promise Zone. Where's the mouse?
So at first, I really didn't understand why SHRA was getting a contract for design, but then you really did a good job of explaining why they're involved in this, and I think everyone's read that the whole neighborhood is being remodeled. So are they going to go through an entire design process in terms of site plan and architecture, or is some of that already done?
Some of it's been done, ma'am. The preliminary engineering is done. We're going at the final design now, and we will be reaching out to the public and getting more input as we go along.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
No problem.
Great.
So,
Okay, moved by Director Hans, seconded by Director Jennings. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Abstentions?
Motion carries at 96 votes.
Okay, item 9.
Item number 9,
Yeah.
resolution, amending resolutions 0910 0174 and 1603 0024 to 1, reinstate the discount monthly student pass on electronic fare media. 2, allow the use of a school ID card as verification of eligibility for use of the student semi-monthly and monthly pass on the electronic fare media. And 3, permit a semi-monthly pass sticker affixed to a school ID card to serve as valid fare media. And Casey Courtwright is here to answer your questions.
Okay. Good evening, Casey.
Okay.
Director Budge?
so on Wednesday, I got this nice press release about about this whole project, and I sent it around to all our partners who are helping us in our city to advertise this. And then when I read the staff report, I feel like maybe I shouldn't have sent it out to anybody until we voted on it. I'm confused.
Yeah, so we had a directive at our last meeting to begin pushing this on our electronic forms of fare media as quickly as we could. And so we made a decision last week to go ahead and start the public information ahead of this board meeting that we are going in this direction, that we would like to include the student sticker affixed to the student's school ID card, as well as introducing the monthly forms of fare media on both our Connect card and the Zip Pass app.
So, okay, I took it as a fait accompli. People that I sent it to took it that way, and it does say the special price is available from January through June 2018. It doesn't say if the board approves it, so I just thought that was a little bit odd in terms of process.
Correct.
So
Yes.
I'm glad we're covering that.
Yeah, it was an effort to try to, like I said, to try to get this out there as quickly as we could, and we were already, a month behind in the month of January. We had a lot of requests for the monthly sticker. Why is it 2 semi-month stickers? That kind of stuff, and so it was kind of a reaction to that, as well as a response to the board's direction in December.
Okay.
Okay, Director Tolley?
Yeah, while this is off consent, and just a quick question as relates to, and you touched on them just a moment ago with your last comments, is that on the semi-monthly sticker, so we are going to be issuing those at the school, or are they going to be getting them in the mail? How do they get that sticker? Do they download it so that it's affixable to their student ID? Because that means every 2 weeks you're having some sort of communication via whatever method you're going to use. But if you have to actually physically affix that to your student ID, that means you got to get a lot of somebody's a sticker versus the Connect card. And I mean, and I know we're trying to ease the ability for folks to have the fare and present it in different ways. But I guess I'm curious about that. Twice a month, so that's 24 times a year, you're going to be issuing something that affixes to a student ID card.
So the sticker, actually about 90% of the sales of the physical sticker happen directly on site at the school. And so we use the sticker historically to distribute to schools so that they could sell to their students for us while the kids are at the school site themselves. So that's continuing, and we plan on continuing that through this school year at least. But for new students who are coming on board, and even at the schools themselves, we're beginning to push Zip Pass and push transition to Connect Card to just make this as available as we can for this 6-month promotional period.
And then, just from a standpoint, maybe Britt and Q, but at the school, then you issue a certain number, or how does that? How do you get the coincidence and making sure that whatever was issued, that the fare that was issued, media fare that was issued, that wasn't sold, and so again, how is it secured? I assume the schools have their own security systems for. Because that's almost like legal tender to some degree, at least from the use of public transit. So,
correct. So we sell all of our prepaid fare media to schools and other state agencies, et cetera, are all done on consent. So we will issue them an invoice for the full allotment of their shipment of stickers, and then what they do is they return any unsold fare media to us and discount the price paid by whatever they're returning.
They get a credit. They get a credit.
They do get a credit off of the initial full invoice for their entire allotment of stickers, and so we do typically send a generous amount of media to the schools, especially, so that if we do have new students coming on, they're not running out of stickers mid-month and asking us for emergency shipments and stuff. So.
One final question then is, you said you're going to start pushing the Zip Pass and the Connect Card, and what's your anticipated utilization? Do you hope to have over a course of a year or two everybody on that versus the sticker media, or I guess I'm just kind of curious what the goal is here.
Yeah, I think our goal honestly is by the beginning of next school year that we would have our schools transition to either one form or the other, the Zip Pass or the Connect Card, and probably it's going to be a combination of both at each school. The Zip Pass is great for on an individual basis. If the student has a cell phone, they can download the app and buy. Connect Card is something that we can make available to all of the students, same as we can with the sticker, by just providing enough card media and stuff to the schools. So the goal would be to, by next school year, have the schools transitioned, as well as all of our other major sales outlets that we have.
And Director Natoli, I just wanted to point out I think you were going down one road as far as we do a semi-monthly pass, and it's 24 months. It's a lot of back and forth with whether it's a school or us. And I think one of the concerns is initially, this is maybe 10 or 15 years ago, we had a monthly pass, but what we found is that students and parents actually asked for a semi-monthly pass because it was an affordability issue. So that's why you wound up with a semi-monthly. I don't know if that was made clear in the
okay. And I kind of recall that. Again, I think this is pretty affordable if you look at inflation and so forth. But I guess maybe 10 versus paying $20 each month, paying 10, and every 2 weeks paying another 10. But it's a little bit more handling, at least if you're doing the printed fare. But okay, thank you.
All right.
Just want to add another piece of information, Director Natoli. The first month, January, we are the students' ridership increased by 10% because of this effort. And we're thinking about in the future, if this is going to be a successful pilot project, we would like to have like a quarterly or semi-annual or annual passes for students at an even deeper discount. So that will leave some inconvenience of the parents or students. If they just buy one year, for example, $60 for 1 year, that will really return more riderships. So I just want to add that comment here.
Great.
So I will move the item. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. I'll go ahead and second that. So all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Abstentions?
Motion carries at 96 votes.
Okay, next item.
Item number 10, resolution delegating authority to the general manager CEO to submit a proposal in response to the request for proposals for turnkey operation and maintenance of public fixed route and paratransit services issued by the Yolo County Transportation District, and to certify on behalf of the SAC-RT Board of Directors that the proposal meets all applicable requirements on the of the Federal Transit Administration. And Mark Lonergan is here to answer any questions.
Okay, great, thanks. I do have one request to speak on this item. Jeffrey Tartagia.
Want me to go before Mark or after?
Yep, you're on.
All right. Wait a minute, guys. You've been poaching the Glendale County drivers, and they are excellent drivers. Now, you, after spending 2 years trying to get I-80 fixed, you're now wanting to take over all of YOLO to provide transportation on 1 hour bus service? I'm sorry. I don't see it working. You know, I mean, especially you're now delegating authority to, so you have no idea about seniority, rights, anything else with the people who try, or you're just going to get rid of everybody and, you know, RT's going to take over and provide the service. The idea is great to connect and bring service about the whole area over, but I will say, you know, as wonderful it might be thought, it needed to have a, like the, should we say, mobile accessibility for routes. It needs probably 6 months of time to figure out exactly. They got great information that would be great to understand and maybe provide methodology and understanding how putting out notices and everything else. But are you going to get that when you try to do this for YOLO?
Thanks, Jeffrey. Okay, no other requests to speak on this item. I'll go ahead and move item 10. Seconded by Jay. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions?
Motion carries at 96 votes.
Right. Next item, please.
Next item
Mr.
is
Chair?
General
Hold
man.
on.
Yeah, just before you leave that, I just, one clarification, doesn't involve the motion as much as, but, so, in our proposal, though, we would fix the costs for basically a 12-year period if we were successful in actually negotiating that, is that correct?
First, I would like to actually, Mark, I'm going to.
Yeah, and I didn't mean to get out of order here, but I mean,
I would like to respond to what Jeff just talked about. I appreciate his concern, but his assumptions are all wrong, inaccurate. I just want to say that. I will explain to him later.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I didn't get.
Yeah, I just wanted to know, so when we submit the proposal, whatever we put into that, assuming that it were to come to pass and we got to some agreement, all of our costs and prospective income and expenses would be calculated for 12 years fixed with no renegotiation?
It's about 7 years. That is the initial 7 years, and then 5 more years is renewable years. And
Okay.
the cost will be very much fixed, and there's some formula built in there.
But it would be fixed for 12 years, though. It doesn't say renegotiate in at the end of 7. It says in the staff report, 12 years fixed is what it said, with no chance for renegotiation. That's what I want to be clear about.
That's true. We would be escalating it each year based on our assumptions over, the increase in cost.
So if we didn't hit it right,
Yes, there would be there. Yeah, we could actually receive more money from Yellow Bus.
that's how it usually works. I'm sure. Okay. All right. Thank you. That's all I have.
Great. Thanks. Okay, any other questions? All right. So next item.
General Manager's report.
Okay, Henry, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Good evening, Chair Moran, members of the board, and the public. Before I start my report, I would like to share a couple of great pictures. Who is putting picture together? Adam? Okay. Last month, Sacramento participated in MLK March by providing 13 additional buses and carrying over 6,600 rides for that event. And we also were pleased to support the Women's March this past Saturday and helped over 4,000 riders for the event and approximately 7% of all attendees. That's a nice picture over there. The second couple of pictures are our latest arts wraps on light rail. And this is a great teamwork by Sacramento team and the arts community in the whole region. I want to thank all people who involved in this process, and from our board, especially Director Hansen and Director Budge, give us lots of guidance and advice, and sometimes push to move forward, because this is a long time in the making. Thank you.
Mr. Chair.
May I ask a
Director
question,
Hansen, and then Director Budge.
because I'm so very interested in the art wraps, but also simply because I'm interested in the way in which our rolling stock looks. And unfortunately, so many of the trains on the goal line, even with the new wraps, are already dirty and dingy. And it just doesn't seem like even the new wraps provide some sort of a surface that's easy to keep clean. That's a concern.
Okay, we take that, to see how we can improve on that.
Director
I
Hansen?
appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to say, when the board called for this in October of 2014, or is it 15? 15, Cindy?
I think so.
Your memory is peerless as far as its
No.
retention.
Thank you.
We didn't think it would take this long. Obviously, there were a lot of challenges. I just want to thank Mark Lonergan for rolling with the punches a little bit, because the provider we were going to work with ended up folding into another organization. It was very logistically challenging. And so ultimately it was the Sacramento Metropolitan Arts Commission staff that we worked with, and there's even turnover in staff. So it took a long time. And I think these are the first 2 trains of, is it 4 or 5? 4. So I think this is great, and it responds to the call the community did, which is to try to give more meaning to our transit system through the eyes of the community. And I want to thank the staff for all the work here, and I look forward to hopefully Linda joining the rest of us at maybe the launch of our art trains.
Thanks, Steve. Henry?
Yes. Today we will first present some employee awards for the long and dedicated services for quarterly awards. For the last quarter, the award recipients with us tonight are Roy, Jeff, Raymond. Roy, where are you? Okay, great. Roy is Mechanical A at Light Rail for 40 years of service. Yeah. And also Roger Thorne, Director of Information Technology for 20 years of service. Roger, come over. And Henry Watson, bus operator for 30 years of service. Henry?
Okay, guys. Stay there.
20, 30, and 40.
Very nice. Thank you.
On January 12th, SACRT submitted our application to the State of California's Transit and Intercity Rail Capital Program, or TIRCP. This grant program is a tremendous opportunity for transit systems statewide. It's $2.4 billion, or even more than $2.4 billion, will be dispersed to various projects sometime in April throughout the state. SACRT's project is titled Accelerating Rail Modernization and Expansion in the Capital Region, requesting total $400 million, including $100 million local matching, to completely modernize our existing light rail system. Our proposal calls for replacing over 1/3 of our aging light rail fleet, adding 10 additional new vehicles on top of our currently 97 light rail vehicles, completing double tracking for Golden Line to Folsom, modifying 48 low-floor light rail stations, and constructing 2 new light rail stations, one at Holmes Roads in Rancho Cordova and another at Dos Rios in the River District. As part of the project proposal, we also plan to provide later night and improved frequency of service to the city of Folsom. These improvements will dramatically improve our customer experience, attract nearly 16 million new ridership annually over the life of the project, and significantly reduce greenhouse gas emissions by nearly 500,000 metric tons of CO2 by taking automobile trips off our busy roadways. So I would like to acknowledge and thank SACRT and the SACOG staff for the hard work over the past few months. They literally worked on weekends and nights to get this done. I also want to thank nearly 50 peer agencies or partners who graciously submit strong supporting letters for our project, including Congresswoman Matsui, Mayor Stenberg, Senator Richard Penn, Assemblymember Kevin McCarthy, and others. 50 supporting letters are kind of difficult to get. And we believe we have put forth a stellar, comprehensive, and competitive application. So we hope we get some good news by the end of April. Next, I would like to share a couple very exciting TOD-related news, and actually this is required by the board. Last, a couple board meetings, and the board asked me to report back what's going on. Early this month, I signed 2 purchase sales agreements that will lead to transit-oriented housing development along our light rail lines. The first agreement is with Symphony Development for SACRT's property adjacent to the 65th Street Light Rail Station. Symphony Development is a statewide development corporation with a long track record of specializing in student housing, mixed-use projects, multifamily residential and retail projects in California. Symphony is proposing to construct approximately 145 units or 600 beds, mixed-use high-density students housing projects with approximately up to 10,000 square feet of retail spaces, including hotels and other retail stores. Located just minutes from the Sac State campus and adjacent to our light rail station, this development will be a catalyst for economic growth and will attract new riders to our system while bringing $2 million revenue to SACRT's capital reserve. The second agreement I signed is with Community Housing Works, or CHW, for our property on Arden Way. CHW is a California nonprofit public benefit corporation with a long track record of developing affordable housing on sites that are transit-oriented across California. The plan is to construct hundreds of multifamily affordable housing units on the property. This is a $1.1 million sale, which will bring new revenue to our agency and provide significant benefit to the community by transforming a blighted parcel into a new housing development. And I want to thank our partners, especially from the city council, who helped on this, and some of our board members who made a huge effort to help on this, especially Director Harris. These purchase sales agreements are a historical first step for our agency, and we hope in the near future to update the board with similar successful projects. And we have a couple on the pipeline. We're going to sign the agreement very soon. The next update is about our microtransit pilot project. Recently, we draw some significant national attention with our microtransit pilot project, which will be launched in the city of Central Heights in February 12th. And thanks to our partner from Central Heights and Director Miller. Customers will be able to use a mobile app, go online, or call SACRT directly to schedule their on-demand citywide trips on the same day in real time. We're very excited about being among the first to launch microtransit technology in our region and in the nation. And SACB reporter Mr. Tony Bijak said this could open a dramatic new future for mass transportation, one that does not involve walking to a bus stop and wondering when the next bus will arrive. So here to tell us more is SACRT COO Mark and the Deputy COO and the Microtransit Pilot Project Manager Alva Carrasco. And they did a wonderful presentation to the Citrus Heights Council. So I want them just share some brief slides with the board.
So I wanted to kick this off by saying that this is really exciting. If we measure RT's success by efficiency, by how many passengers we carry per hour, then our high-frequency bus service that we run and our light rail system wins hands down. But unfortunately in our community, or maybe fortunately in our community, those kinds of services don't fit everywhere. And we've struggled in some areas to find the right mix of service that serves the community that we're running in. And so microtransit technology has come to the point where it offers us a potential solution in those areas. And so we're focused on Citrus Heights, as Mr. Lee said, because recognizing that years ago, working with our partners in Citrus Heights, we put in place a public dial-a-ride. It's a traditional public dial-a-ride. You have to book a day before, and it caters towards a certain demographic. But it does actually do quite well, and as I understand from Citrus Heights, it's been very popular. This takes it the next step. This makes it more Uber-like. This provides the person to schedule on truly an on-demand basis. And we're able to test it for very, very little money because, again, the service is already running. Our partners in Citrus Heights are gracious enough to partner with us on this, to use that service as kind of a guinea pig, which we hope will only get better. But it also gives us such a strong base to measure from because we know how many people we carry. We know what the customer experience is. And we'll know what we change to and whether it's an improvement in either of those two areas. So very exciting opportunity to test this. It has applications in a number of other parts of our service district. Rancho Cordova is a potential. Certainly in the county, there's a number of areas where we might be looking at something similar if this takes off. This, you might ask, why are we doing this now with the route optimization study? This is a great test as we start route optimization of a concept that might be used broader in the community. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to Ms. Carrasco, who's the Deputy Chief Operating Officer, and she'll go through a few slides in a little bit more detail.
Thanks, Mark. Good evening, Alva.
Good evening, Chair and members of the board. I'm very excited to come to you tonight to share information on SACRT's microtransit pilot project. But before I get into a little bit on the project itself, I wanted to share a little bit about Transloc, our partner in this project.
And greater flexibility getting from point A to point B. And the number...
Thank you.
No question, the world of public transportation is changing at lightning speed. Beyond fixed routes and schedules, riders want more convenience and greater flexibility getting from point A to point B. And the numbers prove it. How do transit agencies live in a world filled with Uber and Lyft? You want to deliver the best possible experience for your riders. But big changes mean big risks, right? Introducing Transloc, the most flexible agency-owned microtransit solution that puts public agencies in the driver's seat. Whether it's solving for first mile, last mile, coverage versus frequency, off-peak transportation, or generally just serving more riders, data is crucial to knowing where to start. That's why we've designed a complete three-step approach. Step 1 is simulation. Using big data and predictive modeling, we simulate your most successful options without ever having a single vehicle leave your parking lot. Step 2 is piloting your custom simulations to mitigate any risky ventures. Our microtransit experts work closely with you to ensure your success from day one. And Step 3 is deploying our cloud-based flexible demand response system. More flexibility means better efficiency and a better rider experience, significantly reducing ride time and rider wait time while increasing riders by more than 50% at the same operating cost. It's as simple as 1, 2, 3. Let Transloc help your agency remain central to the future of modern transportation. Transloc. Deliver the ultimate rider experience. Talk to our microtransit experts today.
So in the presentation, it talked about the 3 steps. We have already completed the first and are about to launch our second step, which is to launch the microtransit pilot. We've already completed the simulation. We've developed our implementation pilot plan, which, as you know, we launch on February the 12th. We completed our operator and dispatcher training today. And on February 12th, we'll start our first phase of the pilot with City Ride in the city of Citrus Heights. Our second phase, we will be looking on how we incorporate the city of Orangevale into this pilot. And during the pilot, of course, we will be analyzing the ridership data that we receive from this system. And this is introducing the new look of our Smart Ride service, formerly known as City Ride. This wrap will be the design that both vehicles that will be assigned to Citrus Heights will have. And we're planning a press conference that day, first day of launch. And you'll hear more about that as details are available. Some of our major goals that we'd like to accomplish during this pilot is we want to see if this is a viable solution for the city of Citrus Heights and other areas that we may want to include. The system will also provide us travel pattern data and rider habits that we did not have before. It'll optimize our resources, help us optimize our resources with the information that we receive through the system, through the pilot. And it absolutely improves passenger experience. The option for a rider to know exactly where the ride is at any given time, real time, is absolutely wonderful because you don't have to go outside and wait. If it's raining outside like today, you can track it on your phone or online or call our dispatcher and you will be told what time to expect that vehicle. We plan to use this pilot to also try to improve connections to other local fixed bus route service and our light rail service. And of course, we'd like to see existing ridership to grow on existing routes and encourage new riders to use our system. Any questions about our wonderful pilot that we're launching next month?
Thanks, Al. Questions for Alva? Director Miller?
No questions. Just wanted to tell you how excited I am and to thank you for bringing this service forward. Alva and I talked about it riding down to a Capitol Corridor meeting one day. I'm on. And the biggest thing, I think, is allowing the spur-of-the-moment rides and talking with a lot of our elderly and disabled. You know, the paratransit, it works, and the City Ride works, but you still have to plan the day before, and you're locked in. And if a doctor's appointment goes late, I mean, there's concerns there about actually getting your ride home.
Right.
So this will be especially helpful for our seniors and our disabled, where they'll be able to do spur-of-the-moment trips. Gentleman, Philip, that I talked to would get invited out with his friends to pizza and beer, and he just, without planning it the day before, could not get a ride. So very excited. And
what I like about the system too is that now you can do your trip reservation the day of, not the day before.
Exactly.
And what happens on our side too is people call their reservation a day before, anticipating that they may need a ride, but the next day, a large percentage of those reservations are canceled because they find another mode.
Exactly.
So this enables us to be more efficient in our scheduling of our vehicles.
I anticipate our biggest challenge will be actually getting the word out and the publicity around it. But that's why we're doing a pilot, is to
Yes,
create that buzz.
We have been meeting with Transloc, our marketing department. As you see, the design on the vehicle that was designed in-house. We have a lot of plans on the marketing and communication side to get the word out.
Thanks, Alva.
Great. Thank you, Alva.
Thank you.
Okay, Henry?
Yes, the last update from me is I'd like to introduce our wonderful state and federal advocacy or engagement team who have been keeping busy to further our legislative goals and actively advocate on behalf of SACRT's transit priorities. Our advocates work hand in hand with Connie Garcia of our government affairs. Today, they will present their respective advocacy updates and the transportation policy look ahead to 2018. First, I would like to invite Mr. Mark Watts of Smith, Watts, and Hartman, who is a top transit or transportation expert in the state, to provide a state update, and he will be followed by Mr. Jeff Booth of Booth Transit Consulting, who is a highly recognized national expert to update us on federal matters. Thank you. Floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Lee and board members. I'm pleased to be here again at the beginning of the year. We're at that point where we're in between the governor's introduction of his budget and his State of the State, which is yet to come, which will fill out some of the vision that he intends to share. And speaking of the budget, there's no surprise the transportation component of the new State Budget Act fully shows or reflects the implementation of SB 1 passed last year. The tax revenues that had begun in November of this year are shown carrying through. Probably most importantly and directly impactful for Sacramento RT is the formula-based distribution of the State Transit Assistance Program, and the amount of funding provided by the new act essentially doubles the formula funding for each transit agency, including RT, for the coming year. I can go through more detail, but there's a couple other topics I want to cover, and I didn't press the 3-minute button, so I'm going to take a little bit longer,
You're good,
but not
Mark.
too much.
You're good.
Okay, thank you. The total of transit resources for transit available for transit operations, including the GGRF, the Greenhouse Gas Reduction Funds for the Low Carbon Transportation Operations Program, which is also very similar to the State Transit Assistance Program, almost $855 million for the year. It's just, I've worked on transit and transportation funding for so long, I can't believe I've said $855 million for State Transit Assistance Program. I remember years, 27 million was a good year, or 130 million was a climb out of a hole. So it's very remarkable to see this day and age. Moving on, the priorities for RT in the legislative arena. We have a bill that Mr. McCarty had been introduced for us last year that deals with the enabling statutes of regional transit. It's AB 709. The measure is in the process of receiving amendments out of Legislative Council. I haven't seen the final set. I helped draft what went in. It refines some of the language that staff had developed, and it does retain the weighted voting option in the language that we have now. There's more discussions to come, but this language is ready to go. We're in a fortunate position because the bill is in its last position on the Senate floor, so we have some time to work on the bill and move it forward once Mr. McCarty gives us the go-ahead. In addition, one of the routinely each year, Connie directs me to work collaboratively and closely with the California Transit Association and their program, and I'm happy to do so again this year. I work on a number of different fronts with the good team at CTA, so I look forward to that this year. I think one thing I want to bring you up to speed on, and I think I touched on this when I was here at the year-end presentation in 2017, there are two intertwined issues that are coming together. First, as part of SB 1, a companion measure, ACA 5, was adopted by the legislature and intended to go to the ballot in June of 2018. It's the lockbox for those elements that are new or increased within the SB1 programs, the revenues that were either newly structured revenues or increased revenue amounts that hadn't previously been covered in the Constitution, and it puts a lockbox around those. It's about a third of the new SB1 money in total, so it was a very important piece to put through the legislature and place on the ballot. A campaign organization is forming that was based on the Fix Our Road Coalition that was very successful in pushing SB1. They are putting together a program to support through a campaign effort, which is a private-oriented effort for ACA 5. Interestingly, they are also going to then, if the one remaining repeal initiative intending to eliminate the funding from SB1 qualifies in April of this year, they intend to then wrap the two program campaigns together, because the lockboxing it in January is a good segue into in their minds, into opposing the repeal in November. So that's underway right now, and if you ever had any questions, I'd be glad to answer those. I'm working with those folks pretty closely right now. And last but not least, I was hoping to give you a little bit more detail on the cap and trade program. The governor did announce in his budget that he has identified that this year there'll be $1.25 billion available in 2018-19. I think it's going to be a lot more than that based on the last two auctions, but we don't know yet. And he closed out his comments by indicating that he will share his vision for the expenditure plan of those resources in the state of the state instead of in the Budget Act. So with that, I would draw my overview and look ahead to a close.
Great, thanks. Thank you very much, Mark. Director Hansen?
Mark, when is the State of the State?
The Thursday.
Oh, okay.
This coming Thursday.
Great.
So.
Okay, any other questions for Mark? All right, thanks as always for the great work, Mark.
Thank you, appreciate it.
Right. So, can you top that for good news, Jeff? What do you got from Washington?
Oh, if I only could. I was originally supposed to come here in December, but we thought that if I waited till January that I could actually report on the wrap-up of the legislative session and the appropriations process for FY18. Well, if you've been following the news, that didn't happen. What happened today was, in fact, a 3-week extension of the continuing resolution until February 8th. Without resolution of some of the key underlying issues, which, first of all, is determining the funding levels for domestic and defense spending for FY18 and 19. That's still unresolved, even though I think there's agreement that both of those numbers will increase. At what levels, we're still not clear, but that didn't get resolved. And the real issue that's, obviously, if you've been following the discussion at all, is about immigration. And that's the key issue, and that issue did not get resolved in this 3-week extension. And so now we have 3 more weeks to come to the same point we came to last Friday. And I'm predicting that we won't reach agreement on February 8th either, and that the real drop-dead date is March 9th. And you say, well, why is that? Well, that's the date the president set for the 6-month extension of DACA, and that's the day it expires. For those who are not familiar, that's the Dreamers. And that, I think, is the real deadline in which the Democrats are negotiating against, which is most critical to them. And there was agreement on the Democrats would support the border wall or funding of the border wall, which was important to the president. But there was disagreement on the other elements of the immigration issue between the Democrats and Republicans, and those issues remain apart. And so it's unclear what the pathway to resolution is. So why is that important? If we don't reach agreement on the funding levels for FY18, the appropriations committees cannot move to markup and complete action on the appropriation bills because they don't know against what numbers they're marking up those bills against to do the 12 appropriations bills. So we need to get this resolved, because once we figure out what the numbers are for 18 and 19, then the appropriations committee can get to work on drafting appropriations bills to finalize funding. It's also important that we resolve the FY18 Transportation, Housing, and Urban Development Bill, because there's bill and report language that's in both the House and Senate bill that would give direction to the administration to advance projects through the process and execute grant agreements. That's important to the streetcar, because not only is the FY18 the second year of funding for the streetcar project, but it also gives direction to the administration to enter into grant agreements for small star projects and new star projects. And as I stand here today, there are 10 projects, small star projects, that are fully funded out of FY16 and FY17 monies, who are fully funded and ready to go, and they still don't have grant agreements. And the administration is not moving forward until that bill and report language is included in the bill and the statute of the conference report that gives them direction to execute these grant agreements, even though legally they have the authority to execute the grant agreements without that language. And so they're holding off until that happens. And so it's important to resolve this process to execute grant agreements to allow projects to keep moving forward. Now, what does this mean for FY19? Normally, when you develop an FY19 budget, you're using the FY18 numbers as your baseline for budgeting purposes. But if you don't have an adopted bill that funds the government for FY18, what do you use for your baseline for a budget that's supposed to be introduced on February 15th? So it's not clear at this point if the president will still proceed with the budget for February 15th, or whether they'll delay introduction of the budget until they resolve the FY18 appropriations process. So that's still unclear. That's also important for the capital investment grants program, because they're supposed to submit requests for projects and to identify the new ratings for all projects for which they're proposing funding in FY19. The language is important because it's been communicated to me in 2 meetings I had with the deputy administrator that it's the intent of this administration to wind down the capital investment grants program, which means they don't want to execute new grant agreements. So this becomes a policy fight between Congress and the administration over the future of the program. And so I think they'll be waiting to see for the language to give them clear direction that Congress still supports this program, does not support the administration's budget request, and hopefully this will break the logjam to let those projects go forward. So that's where we stand right now in the program. And so we're in this waiting pattern, waiting for these issues to resolve, to finally figure out what our funding level will be and to have this language that gives them direction to move forward with the program. Any questions before I move on to other topics?
Hey, any questions for Jeff on that? Director
Yeah,
Schneider?
not a question so much as a comment. I understand what you said. We have 2 groups of folks going to D.C. over the next few months, one through the Asian Chamber and then cap to cap as well.
Yes.
I just want to make sure that you guys are working with them to make sure that they have the talking points they need as they go do their visit.
Connie and I have spoken about that. I've talked to Mr. Lee about that as well, that it's important that your points get included in that as part of the broader discussion from the region at those 2 events. So
you're working with both groups? Okay, great. Thank you.
So I think it's important because it's important to the region, because the capital investment grants program is not only important for the streetcar, but it's also important for the future of the extension of the Green Line. And as we talked to staff today about double tracking at Folsom is a possible project that could be eligible through the core capacity program. So there are other projects in the queue that are important to the region that could be funded out of that program. And so I think the future of the program is critical for those things to happen. And so that's why I put the emphasis on it. The other thing that happened today is we saw a 6-page document coming out of the President's infrastructure plan. And what's interesting is it fits the dimensions of what we've seen earlier about the plan, although we're still waiting for the actual plan, which right now we'll wait till after the State of the Union, which will be next Monday, for more detail. And I'm predicting that I think it'll actually be part of the FY18 budget proposal that comes up to Congress mid-February. But what's interesting about it is that they propose that half the money would go to what they refer to as a infrastructure incentives program, and essentially it only it gives the greatest weight to new money. So if you've passed a tax in the past, like Los Angeles or Alameda County, that gets discounted by a certain percent based on the number of years since you passed that tax. Why they do that, I don't know. It also caps the level of funding from that program to 20% of the total project cost, with the idea that now 80% is supposed to come from non-federal sources, which flips the math from what it had historically been for transportation projects. And it also encourages sort of more financing through the existing TIFIA programs and the RIF programs, the Railroad Infrastructure Program, and creates a new federal financing program that would be managed by the federal government to do early property acquisition for real property. And so we'll see what happens, and 25% of the monies go to rural areas. Now, what's missing in this proposal is how to pay for it. And so at this point, to me, it's dead on arrival on the Hill without the identification of how we're actually going to pay for it. Since, oh, by the way, the tax bill that passed last month did not address the future of the gas tax or the future of the Highway Trust Fund or the Mass Transit account. So at this point, no action was taken to sort of resolve that issue of the future of those two programs and how we'll finance infrastructure beyond 2020. So we're still waiting for them to address that issue. So I think this proposal will make its way to the circular file at some point in time, because it doesn't have any means to pay for it, although they talked at some point in time about including the gas tax increase as part of this, but it's not part of this proposal yet, so we'll have to see if in fact it's been done. With respect to the tax package that happened last month, once again, as I said, it failed to address the Highway Trust Fund, which is disappointing. It also changed the commuter tax benefits to basically eliminate the employer deductibility of the commuter tax benefits as part of the employer cafeteria plan, but it retained employee deduction, so you can claim it as an individual, but the employer can't claim it on their tax return as a benefit to be offered to employees, which really undermines the whole point of it, which is it had always been an employer-provided incentive. So while they offered it at one, they maintained it at one level, they really undercut it at another level. So it's a little bit disingenuous, if you ask my humble opinion, on sort of what they were trying to do. They also didn't extend the alternate fuels tax credit, which is important to RT, given the fuels you're using to power your buses. And there is talk of legislation. Orrin Hatch, the chairman of the Senate Finance Committee, at the end of last year, introduced a bill that would extend a lot of those tax extenders. He was hoping that it would be part of this broader package that Congress will ultimately adopt. So it's possible that he could add it as an amendment to this package that wraps up continuing resolution, addresses immigration, and could be the catch-all bill that addresses other issues that have to get done. Because I guarantee you that once this bill happens and we get into the spring of this year, Congress will stop. I mean, nothing will happen, as everybody will now be focused on the 2018 elections. So we'll be pretty much having gridlock for the 6 months prior to the election because of what's at stake in the fall of 2018. So that's just my assessment of where we're going. So with that, I'm open to any other questions you might have, and with my rosy and optimistic report today, but happy to answer any questions you might have about what's happening.
Great, thanks. Thanks for being so tuned in there, Jeff. Any questions for Jeff? All right, thanks. Thanks, Jeff. All right, back to Henry here. Evening, Brent.
Good evening. Okay, so let's see if I can give you some good financial news here. So November was good. Operating revenues came in higher than expenses, so you'll see that. You'll see November operating surplus came in about $244,000. The surplus year to date, let me bring that up really quick, is approximately $1.8 million. So that's really good. From a budget to actual standpoint, for the month of November, we're below budget by 2.3% when it comes to revenues. However, that was offset with a positive note because expenses were below budget by about 4.1%, and that's this number right about there. So again, that's why we have these positive financial results for November. Now, if I jump over to fares, you'll see that we're actually lower in fares. Fares came in about $2.2 million for the month of November. This is about $345,000 under budget. And year to date, we haven't been doing as well either. So I think one thing we kind of talk about is we've been focusing on ridership, and that's understandable. When you start focusing on ridership and we've seen this shift to electronic fares, we're kind of expecting some of this. So we're still keeping our eye on it, but that's something we just want to keep in the back of our mind. The next thing that we have to think about is when you deal with fares, a loss in fares, you also have a lower fare box recovery. So you'll see November came in about 18.6% as compared to the budget of 20.5%. When you look at it on a more year-to-date basis, it's not as so bad. We actually had a big cost savings in October. We were able to charge some money to some capital projects, and that helped us from a cost perspective. And in October, the expenses were really good from a variance standpoint. So that kind of helped us out from this standpoint. The next thing we look at is ridership. You can see November, we're down about 4.6 as compared to the goal. On a year-to-date basis, we're actually really close to the goal. We're just slightly down 1%. But I guess some good news is we don't have the December all completed from a financial standpoint, but the ridership numbers we do have completed, and December actually looks better. It looks like we're achieving and actually exceeding our goal for December, and I'll bring that to the next board meeting. Then one of the things I wanted to mention is, we lowered our fares for our K through 12 students, and that's kind of one of our plans to try to improve this ridership. And I think Casey might have mentioned a little bit about that. And what we're seeing is you have three ways that students are buying the fares. They can buy the sticker, they can buy the fares through the Connect card, or they can buy it through the mobile fare app. And we're looking at the mobile fare app and the Connect card and the stickers that are purchased through customer service. That makes up about 12% of our student fares, and we're seeing that number increased by about 147%. So it's small numbers we're talking about because it's only 12% of that population, but it's a big growth. Like if you look at October, November, and December, you'll see December really spike up in that electronic fare area. So that's a good sign. Students are out there, they're using their phones, they're using electronic media. If we can keep pushing it out to there, if we can keep pushing that out, we're going to get a positive reception. The other thing we're doing with ridership, Henry had mentioned at the TRIC application, we're looking to get new low floor trains. We're looking to get additional service to Folsom and some new stations at Horn Road and Dos Rios. That's going to attract more riders. So we have this big initiative. It's just going to take us some time to bring those statistics up. And that concludes my presentation.
All right. Thanks as always, Brent. Any questions for Brent? All right. Thanks.
I do have. I'm sorry.
Oh, yes, Director Chenier.
So I'm not actually sure how to ask this, but I know that the trends are not good for the most part. Hopefully December will be better. I guess the question is, are we comparing ourselves to the right thing, which is either last year or our budget, or is it time to kind of re-bench ourselves against, I'm not sure, but the question is, are we looking at the right data here?
That's a good question. So when we say the trends aren't doing as well, that I guess we could say overall they've been financially, we're still doing solid because we have that surplus, right? But when we look at our fare revenues,
right, well,
that's probably, you're right, we're benching it, we're probably a little bit high when it comes to fare revenues. And I think coming into this, we didn't anticipate having some of these programs. We also, with the students, we also are seeing this adoption rate with electronic fares. It's one of those areas where we're going to start seeing, I still predict in the next couple months we're going to still see fare revenues going down for that reason, because these prepaid customers have to eventually shift. There's this trend that we want to happen where they come over and buy electronic fares, because then we have a better match of revenue and ridership. So I guess when it comes to fare revenues, we could probably relook at that fare revenue calculation going forward at a mid-year budget review. The next area we could probably look at is the fare recovery ratio to see if we're benchmarking a little bit high. And I think, again, if we're going to start pushing initiatives for ridership, that's another area we want to probably lower. So we should probably bring something back to the board. When it comes to ridership, I think we did a good job of estimating ridership at a lower level. I think what you're seeing this month is it was a little bit down in November, but again, December we're gonna see some of that come back. So I think we're gonna hold off on ridership to say if the benchmark is inaccurate. I think where you're right though is with fare revenues. We're probably estimating a little bit higher, so we might want to come back at a mid-year budget cycle and relook at that.
Right. Well, and maybe as I think about it too, we need to be looking at what we need to run the system at what levels, and then benchmarking against those things as well. Because we know that across the nation, public transit ridership is decreasing.
Yeah.
So there's certainly a wave going on that we are part of.
Yeah.
But I guess for me, it's more importantly to think about, like, what's the system that we want to operate? What does that require?
Yeah.
And then how do we benchmark against those numbers, which is a different set of data.
Okay.
And just looking at, well, what did we do last year? Because we're benchmarking against a different world in some ways. And so how do we bring that data system up and look at, and I'm not sure what that looks like yet.
That's a good point.
But just trying to think through that. Because otherwise we're going to continue to see failure. And I think we're doing well in so many ways. So it's really having a discussion about what the system should look like and where we should be.
Okay.
Or where we need to be, maybe.
That makes sense.
It doesn't even make sense to me, but you know.
But I hear what you mean with the trend nationwide, with ridership trends coming down. Maybe some of these were still a little bit high. I think we try to make it. You know, we're trying to promote ridership. We're doing all these things, but I think we do need to look at our benchmark.
And maybe it's a way. Maybe the analogy for me is like going to some zero-based budgeting of if we want to build a system, what should it look like, and how can we get to, and then benchmark against that.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's Steve says that's the route optimization. It's certainly a piece of it.
Definitely.
What can we afford at what levels, and then go against that.
We'll try to work on that. You know, just one fact we learned recently when we did start route optimization. Like Houston, they just did route optimization. They actually increased the budget by 4 to 5%, and so the ridership did not decrease, kept flat. But that actually means you add more service, 4 to 5% of service. So that's why the ridership did not decrease. And another fact is the San Diego, about the population is about 20% more than us. But the bus fleet is 4 times more than us. They have 800 buses, and we only have 200 buses. So, the residents in San Diego, they get 3 times more bus services than what we get because of the funding structure. That's a benchmark, whatever we can bring to the board in the future. And we will certainly, do some analysis and bring back.
Yep.
All right.
Okay.
Great. Thanks,
That
Henry.
sounds good. Thank you.
Thanks, Brent.
The last thing I would say, and I think it's going to be, if we're looking at 2020 in November to look at a new piece or a new funding mechanism, this kind of information is going to be really important of what are we envisioning here and what are we trying to get the public to buy and what do they think it's worth. I think that's going to be, and so it's pretty important to do within, I think, the next 6 to 9 months to really have that conversation.
Absolutely. I like our advocacy. Jeff Talagea has been constantly talking about why we're doing this. But the only issue is, the funding is 5 times less than others, and we are actually, we will share some facts with you in the future. Yeah.
Great. Thanks, Jay. So I do have a couple requests to speak on the general manager's report stuff. So Helen O'Connell, and if we could get Mike to Helen, thank you there. And then after Helen is Jeffrey Tardigia.
Hi, Helen O'Connell. I took a look at the meeting calendar for this year, and I was really disheartened to see that we're only having maybe 16 meetings over a 12-month period. And I think that regional transit is a business, and it needs to be able to run in a timely manner, and to do that without bombarding everybody with 3-hour meetings. You need to increase your calendars some so that we can at least have, every other month has 2 meetings. I understand that most of it is holidays that fall on Monday. Maybe you need to move it over to a Tuesday or Thursday meeting, if possible, where the holidays fall in on Mondays, or change a week so that you can get 2 meetings in a month. I don't think once a month or, is going to be enough, because you already have a lot on your plate, and to put more on a plate that's already full, you might miss something very important. And it should be, everything is important and should get your full attention. Thank you very much.
Great. Thanks, Helen. And Jeffrey?
Well, Jeff Tartagia, and what I would offer is dealing with your Connect card. It really needs to be checked out because, as you may see, your bulletin boards emphasizes I use it as a monthly pass and I use it as the cash. And in both cases, I have many times that it does fail. So it doesn't track. So you do not get an accurate track for even my rides, much less me forgetting when I'm rushing to get the train of that, clicking that on. And I suggest that may be another reason why, as we're evolving to the Connect card, is that the fact that you're not tracking the ridership. You may have to figure out a marketing incentive to encourage making sure people do that little clicking for getting that ride on. For me, the way some of them are placed, I'm trying to get on. It's not easy to go back to the ramp, get back there and get on. And as you've probably already heard repeatedly, there's a number of them that just fail on both buses and at stations. So you're not able to keep an accurate record. You can look at my records to see how some places, what I should be doing and what I've done, and you look at them and go, how did it get from here to here? It's not on there.
Okay, thanks, Jeffrey. Okay, so that concludes General Manager's report. Next item, please.
Item number 12, resolution declaring 2051 Evergreen Street property access to transit operations as surplus, presented by Brent Berniker.
Good evening,
Okay,
Brent.
good evening again. So the purpose of this issue paper is to seek approval to declare the property located at 2051 Evergreen Street as surplus to SACRT's operations. So when selling property that has been declared surplus, staff must follow state law that's set out in the government code. A relevant statute requires staff to offer the property for sale to statutory enumerated public agencies and affordable housing sponsors for a period of 60 days. After the 60-day period passes, staff is going to bring back to the board an information item going through those offers and any information on the statutory eligible buyers. If there's any eligible buyers, we're actually going to prioritize based on the order that's set out in Government Code 54227. Buyers that are intending to use the site for affordable housing will be given the highest priority. A qualified buyer will be given 90 days to come to an agreement with SACRT. If we're not able to come to terms within 90 days, that buyer will be put back into the pool. And if we do not receive any offers during that 60-day period, then staff will work with our real estate broker and pursue and evaluate all offers, which will include offers from the public as well. So right now, that was just kind of insight into the future, but right now what we're merely asking to do is declare this property as surplus so that we can begin the disposition process. And then the board will still require, board approval when we get to a final sale, and this action does not obligate the board to sell this property at this point in time. It's just declaration.
Okay, so at the start you mentioned the 60 days, so we would expect something in open session after the 60-day time
Correct.
frame, looking at a potential offer that we would say go.
What we'll do is we'll give you once the 60-day period starts, we'll be tracking that. We'll receive any offers, and then at the end of that 60-day period, we'll bring back an information item with here are the offers that we received.
Okay, perfect.
And so we'll bring something back to the board.
That's what everybody's interested
Exactly.
in. Yes, so Director Hansen?
Just one quick question of clarification. You said an informational item.
Mm-hmm.
Why isn't it not a decision item at that point?
Well, if there are no buyers, then there's no decision, right? It'll kind of depend on what we have, right?
Well, but that seems strange for the normal disposition of property, because normally the offers would be presented to us in a closed session situation. The board would vote, and then that vote would then be presented to the public, because the purchase and sale of real estate is usually a very dynamic situation.
Right.
So can you tell me why we're deviating from our normal processes in the way that or the normal public agency process?
Yeah, what we're doing is we're just trying to make sure we follow government code, in that the way it's been explained to me is we have to post this for 60 days. If there's no interested parties, I guess it all depends on who will apply within those 60 days. If we do receive some interest from an applicable party, we will bring that back to the board so that everybody knows who those parties are. At that point in time, we'll start negotiating with that buyer, right? Because all we have at that 60 days is an offer, and right at.
But aren't we obligated to follow the state law when it comes to agencies eligible first? Normally, like if the city sells property, we have to offer to the school district and other government entities.
Right. Yes.
First. Okay.
Yes.
So
in that 60-day. That's what we're going to be doing. So.
All right.
Maybe let me reiterate so I get to your point. I think what we'll do is during that 60-day period, we're offering this property to enumerated public agencies and affordable housing sponsors for that 60-day period. Okay.
Okay. But it will come back eventually as an action item and not just more information, because I know we have so many members of the community here. They're probably tired of coming to the Regional Transit Board meeting over and over again. Well, I think we owe it to make a decision at one time or another and not just keep kicking the can down the road and not making a decision. So,
all right, Director Natoli.
Yeah, question I have though. So, you mentioned about utilizing a broker at some juncture in this, but for that first 60 days, that's staff that would do that.
Correct. Yeah.
And again, I don't know if we work off a broker's list and so forth, but I'll just express that I want to be sure that the folks that advise us do it in a real estate fashion, not about from a public policy framework or what's good for this or what's good for that. I would just say that some of the comments I think got off track in some of these meetings that we've had in the past, and no reflection on any particular parties, but I just think that for me that's an experience that I would not like to see this body, and certainly the public have to hear somebody's opinion, professional or not, about what's good or what's not so good, as much as it is about valuation and or looking at conditions of sale or conditions of property and so forth. And so, Henry, I know I expressed some concern about that to you after some of our sessions last fall. And I guess I would just say that we're not to that juncture yet. We don't know where we're going to end up with this, but that in the future, that the professional services we utilize, that I think it'll be clear what we're seeking as far as information and direction, and that ought to be reflected in any recommendation comes before this body, whether it's in closed session or in open session. I'm going to depend upon our staff to give us your best recommendation, as I would in any case. And I just think from here forward, whoever we utilize needs to be apprised of that in advising us what their role is and what the role of our staff is and what the role of this board obviously is in making any decisions on property disposition.
Yes, we have instructed the consultant or broker to do so in the future.
Okay, thank you.
We'll make that clear.
Great. Okay, I do have a couple requests to speak on this. Any other director comment? Director Miller?
Could you clarify for me? I understand the 60-day term where you see if there's interest from the statutory requirements of different agencies, from school districts to cities and
Correct.
such.
Yes.
But then there's a 90-day period. Does that run
After.
After.
So yeah, maybe
That's when we negotiate the terms and conditions.
Yeah, now that you opened up, if I could kind of maybe try to give more clarification of that too. So, to Director Hansen's point, we actually don't need to bring an information item forward. What we're trying to do is in the process of transparency to make sure that everyone understands what we're doing, that we are bringing that forward as an information item. Once that 60-day clock expires or passes, we will actually be able to look at the list of those buyers, see who is the highest on the list according to the government code,
Right.
and at that point in time, we'll actually start negotiating. It doesn't mean that we're entering into an agreement, it's just discussions. And so at that point in time, then we have 90 days to come to an agreement.
And then approval by the
And then we would come back to the board with all that, with that final decision for board approval.
Thanks.
Does that clarify?
It does, thank
I'm
you.
sorry, okay.
Perfectly clear.
Okay.
Excellent. Okay. Any other questions for Brent before I get to public requests to speak on this? Okay, so I do have a number of requests to speak on this, so we'll start with Elaine Jackson. Elaine is followed by Patty Taylor, and Patty is followed by Karen Redmond. Good evening, Elaine.
Hi. I'd like to speak about the 95815 district as a whole with regards to RT. We have not really had any improvements in that district at all since I've lived there in the last 17 years. They probably cleaned up a station a little bit, but that's about it. My concern is there's a 3,000 person transfer station at Arden Way. I don't know why RT is wanting to sell this property right now, except for the city did approach them to sell the property to them. And I don't know why we can't have a transfer station moved off of this hugely busy thoroughfare at Arden and Del Paso Boulevard. Why we have not gotten our share of funds from RT, I don't know. It seems like they're spending an awful lot of money on Richards Boulevard, and also now Dos Rios, I hear. They're getting a lot more funds than we are. I think that we deserve our share of public funds. And also I'd like to speak in regards to the conflict of interest that may be on this board in regards to voting for selling this property. The city has approached them, and several of these members are actively involved with the city in acquiring that property for a specific purpose. And I don't believe that they should be able to vote on this issue, because if they have been involved in actively doing that. I think that you're public servants, and I think that you're here to serve us, to all public, including yourselves as the public too. I don't think it would be fair that they were able to vote on this. And I do hope that you're looking out for all of us too in our community, because we live there, and we should be looked at as being just as important as your votes. I hope that you all think about that when you do vote. And there's a number of people here to speak on that. So please think about us, because it impacts us.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks, Elaine. Patty, and following Patty is Karen. Good evening, Patty.
Okay, well, I'm back again. I live in the North Sacramento neighborhood, and I'm concerned about this last parcel in this property that has the 3 parcels. The other 2 have already gone for low-income housing, and we have just heard tonight that that's a kind of exciting project there, as good people are going to be working there. So here's this third piece. We don't want a homeless shelter on it because it's so close to our neighborhood. It's 300 yards, actually, from my son's front door, just around the corner from the elementary school that my granddaughter goes to. Why not make this site on Evergreen a model of success in putting in low-income affordable housing? Why not have that third parcel also go for that purpose? Make it a really wonderful spot there. It makes sense to use all 3 of those parcels for housing. So we know that, I mean, I've heard things change quickly around here, but I have heard that there's someone who wants to buy it, who already has property there. Those 2 big office buildings, they keep those buildings in beautiful shape. They have security around the property. Their workers walk around our neighborhood during their breaks and lunchtime, adding more security for us. They don't want to see a homeless shelter go in there either, and they're going to make an offer. I would just encourage you to consider that kind of offer. So you have a really stunning place there that would help our neighborhood and our business community on Del Paso Boulevard. So many of us have been working for so many years to really make it a wonderful neighborhood, and we hope that businesses will thrive there more, and this could do it. It's really been an exciting evening to hear all these wonderful projects you're doing. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Patty. Karen? Good evening, Karen.
Good evening. I just wanted to make a couple of quick points as you move forward with this process after a bit of a misstep a few months ago. One is, if you do not receive a proposal for additional affordable housing, I hope you'll keep these 2 things in mind. One is in terms of fiscal responsibility, what is the best return on that property for RT? It may not be the same as the appraisal from last May. And the other is a use that is at least compatible with the Royal Oak Station so nearby, that is compatible with the RT riders that use that station, and also friendly to the community. The neighborhood, particularly immediately to the west, that is office buildings, an elementary school, residential, and a business corridor along Del Paso Boulevard. So thank you.
Great. Thank you, Karen. Okay, no more requests to speak on that item. So with that, a motion is in order.
So moved.
Okay, moved by Director Hansen. Seconded by Director Harris. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
No.
Okay. And abstentions?
Okay, motion carries at 86 votes.
Okay. All right, next item, please.
Next item, item number 13, new business. Motion ratifying the selection of chair and vice chair of the SAC-RT Board of Directors beginning tomorrow. And if it needs any explanation, I'd be glad to help
I think
you
we're
there.
good. We built that at our last meeting. So I'll go ahead and move the item. Seconded by Director Jennings. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Motion carries at 96 votes. And tomorrow, Director Kennedy will be Chair Kennedy, and Director Hansen will be Vice Chair Hansen.
Very good. Congratulations, Patrick and Steve.
Next, item number
Looking forward
14, appointment of SAC-RT Board of Directors to various boards and commissions. Item A is the chair appointment to the SAC-RT retirement boards. Currently, only outgoing Chair Moran's appointment is up, which is expired in December. And you also have Mr. Lee on the retirement board, as well as Director Jennings as alternate, whose terms don't expire for a couple of years.
Okay, so I think the only order of business here, in fact, this is just chair appointment, so I just insanely direct myself to continue in this position. So I will go ahead and do that. So happy to serve there for another year, unless there's an anxious volunteer on the board here.
I was about to second your motion that you're going to make.
Should we do them?
We could possibly. Can we do all these motions in a group, since I don't get the feeling there's going to be any changes?
Certainly, I'll read them, and
Okay, so
can
why don't
do
you
that
go
if
ahead
you
and just remind us each one who is currently sitting, and then if we have somebody who wants to vacate, they can speak up.
okay.
And why don't you remind us your discussion with Patrick Hume from.
Certainly. So before we get all started here, my discussion with Director Hume this afternoon, because he's out ill, is that he's willing to continue to sit on the Paratransit Board as well as the San Joaquin Joint Powers Authority.
Great.
With that said, I'll read each item. B is motion appointments to the Capital Corridor Joint Powers Authority. Currently, Director Harris and Miller serve as regular members, and Directors Hansen and Jennings as alternates. Item C, motion appointments to the Sacramento-Placerville Transportation Corridor Joint Powers Authority. Director Budge serves as the regular member, and Director Natoli is the alternate. D, motion appointments to the Paratransit Board of Directors. Currently, Director Hume and Hansen serve as regular members. There are no alternates. E, motion appointments to the Downtown Riverfront Streetcar Policy Steering Committee. Director Harris serves as the regular member, and Director Budge is the alternate. F, motion appointments to San Joaquin Joint Powers Authority. Director Hume serves as regular member, and Director Natoli is the alternate.
Okay, so is everybody comfortable with the lineup there?
Move approval.
Okay, moved by Director Budge, seconded by Director Harris. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Abstentions?
Motion carries at 96 votes.
Right, okay. Oh, I do have one request to speak on this. Mike, I almost missed you there, Mike. You got the final word this evening.
Okay.
You don't need all 3 minutes. You don't have to take all 3 minutes.
Sure. No, it's about the inner-city rail boards for Northern California equipment pool, the Capital Corridor and the San Joaquin. Just to note, I read thoroughly through the issue paper of this item you just voted on. The Capital Corridor Board, which does normally meet on the third Wednesday of the months of February, April, June, September, November, the meeting in February is on the second Wednesday due to a conference staff is going to be attending over the week that would include the third Wednesday. So the next meeting is at 10 a.m. February 14th in the City Council chambers of the City of Suisun City. Their staff is on board the trains all this week doing business plan update workshops. I will be joining them on Thursday at the train departing Sacramento at 5:55 p.m. We're only going as far as Martinez, and we're going to turn around and come back to Sacramento. So if you'd like to get a little taste of what Capitol Corridor has done in the past, wants to do over the next 2 fiscal years, I would say open it up to you. Thursday is a great opportunity. And again, the train leaves 55 minutes after traditional business hours. Hopefully that would be enough sufficient time on that. On the San Joaquin, the meeting for January 26th in Fresno has been canceled. Stakeholders received an email about that meeting cancellation. It's the first time in the history of their JPA since their formation that they have had to cancel a meeting. Staff indicated to me there's no action items to be taken up. The only one would have been approving the next meeting date and location. So since that isn't taking place, they're just going to make the next scheduled date of March 23rd from 1 to 3 p.m. in Fresno, the next scheduled meeting. So if you have room in your schedule to attend to that one, that is the Friday, not of Cesar Chavez weekend, but the weekend before.
Great.
Thank you.
Thanks. Thanks, Mike, as always. Any director comments before we adjourn? Director Cerna, and then Director Hansen.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to take a few moments and publicly thank our General Manager, Henry Lee. Had occasion a couple Saturdays ago to see for myself some unfortunate graffiti that had graced a relatively new bus shelter in front of the Fruit Ridge Community Collaborative on 44th near Roosevelt in the South Oak Park community, as well as some garbage that had collected adjacent to the bus stop, and literally took a photo of it, sent an email to Henry, and by the time I drove back to my home in the Thomas, it was not only washed off, but the whole stop had been power washed. So I just want to thank Henry and his facility maintenance staff for being very, very prompt when these incidents are reported by directors, and by hopefully same thing happens when the public does it. He and I are continuing to dialogue about maybe how to streamline a process working with the South Oak Park Community Association leadership so that they kind of have the same ability to quickly report these sad incidents to the appropriate RT personnel, and they can continue to have very timely response so that we keep our facilities in good working order for the public.
Great.
Thank you, Henry.
Great. Thank you. Thanks, Bill. Steve?
Similarly, I wanted to thank staff, Mr. Lonergan and Mr. Lee, for working with us on a couple bus stop issues. We had some abandoned stops I didn't even realize on Capitol Avenue that hadn't been used in a while, and residents came and they told me that the stops long unused had been causing some challenges for them in parking in the neighborhood, and so I believe Mark worked to remove the unused stops, and we're still working to paint the curbs and stuff to allow the residents to use those spaces again. But it was a very prompt response, and I really appreciated it.
You're welcome. Thanks.
Yeah, Director Chenier?
I want to add one more thank you on a bus shelter on Freeport that was put in at the request of the neighborhood, and did a great job and very quickly. So thank you so much.
I just want to respond to Director Cerna's question. Hope we get this type of inquiry from the customers, the community. We can respond to this quickly. Actually, indeed, we normally try our best to address any issues brought to us, not just because of come from directors and come from communities. We And in the normally, we receive lots of emails on daily basis. We always respond to them right away. Yeah.
Great. Thanks. Thanks, Henry. Director Budge?
Yes, I would add a thank you for the opportunity to tour the electric bus out front. I'm a fan of the technology and a fan of the size of the bus. And he said they're going to be in the area for 2 weeks, and I hope we'll see it motoring around.
We actually are planning to get some money to buy some of those. Hopefully, we'll put that in the Rancho Cordova area. Thank you.
Works for me.
You're a smart man, Henry. Any other comments, questions? All right, Director Jennings.
Just one very quickly. I had the opportunity to participate in the MLK March, and the job that the drivers did to get us to and from, and everything was just an incredible job. And they did it with a smile on their face. There were a lot of people who actually took the rides after the walk, and they were so glad to have taken the rides. And I was one of those, by the way. But just a great job, and to all the drivers, I tried to do what I could while I was on the bus to thank them. But if there is some way that we can thank all those drivers who did that on that day, and I'm sure the same thing could be said to the Women's March, which I was out of town for. But just an incredible job, and I know it takes a lot in order to put that on, but it was an incredible job, and I just wanted to acknowledge that.
Thank you. I just want to add to that. We're going to do a presentation to the board about what I-80, what we're doing over there. We have conducted multiple community outreach meetings and try to get feedback how to improve on that. For that elevator, we constantly repair that. We're constantly doing that, but they're constantly done. So we're going to eventually find a optimal solution to address that issue once for all. But I know there's some discomfort, whatever, always there. We're trying our best.
Right.
And we don't want to spend $2 million to buy two new elevators, then eventually break down all the time again. So we'll try to find a smart way to address that issue. Yeah.
Thanks, Henry. And Rick, thanks for those comments. So with that, meeting adjourned.